Greetings. This is me, Steve. I work at Digital Globe, as you know. There's the coordinates where you can find me basically everywhere. That's a 0 on the end, not an O, because I'm leet like that. And then this is the URL for the slides, not for the sign up. And I will repeat this URL at the end of the deck as well, if you're unsure about whether it's picture worthy yet or not. Okay? Everybody ready to get started? How many came just to hear more about mantis shrimps? Yeah. How many knew about mantis shrimps before this talk? That's a pretty good number. If you didn't, you're going to be totally fascinated by the end and you're going to want to find out more. So here's the agenda and the ground rules. Here's my agenda. You will learn stuff. That's my hope. You will play with satellite images. And you will have fun. And that's probably in decreasing order of importance. So the most important part for me is that you actually are entertained during this, since it's 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon after you've already been through a full day, 2 days of conferences, talks. Okay? So if you're not having fun, then I failed. Hopefully, well. And then this is the sign-up link, but don't go there yet. The other thing is you can tell I'm a very, very I hope you can tell, I'm a very, very informal speaker. I prefer questions when you have them, not can I have a shirt? But I prefer questions when you have them, not at the end of the talk or anything like that, okay? So please feel free to interrupt. I will not make fun of you. I promise. Unless you ask me for a shirt. So what's this? An eyeball. What type of animal's eyeball? Human eyeball, right? Did everybody study this? Sorry, video guy, I'm going to walk. Did everybody study this in high school? Or college at least, or something, right? So rods are responsible for helping us with what? No. Movement, right? So that's the Tyrannosaurus. Sorry, I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying no. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, remember in Jurassic Park, don't move the flashlight, don't move the yeah, so that's your rods. Cones are color. And how many do we have? It's on the picture. 3. Good call. So we have 3. RGB, red, green, and blue. So we can see 3, we can take those 3 and divide the whole world up into 3 color bands. I'm going to call them bands because that's what we do in satellite images as well. But basically you take the reflected light and you change it into 3 different colors in your eyes, and then that gets into your brain, which we'll see in the next slide. Right? This is actually ineffective to walk up and down like this. But the HDMI cord does not go that far. Okay, so this is the whole vision process, right? And this is actually relevant to the stuff we talk about later. Light comes off the sun, right? And it's the full electromagnetic spectrum. Does all of it reach this apple? How many of you remember high school or probably college, what would it be, earth science? Does all the light reach the earth? Electromagnetic energy reach the earth? No. So this is also going to affect our satellites later. But so it comes to the earth, and then what actually makes this look red to our eye? It reflects in the red part of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? So we see, and if there's more reflectance, it looks more red, right? The more reflectance, the more we see that color. That goes to our eyes, lights up our cones, and then, do we know it's an apple or that it's red yet? No. It goes to our visual processing center in the back of our brain, and then we say, oh, that's an apple and it's red. Good? So that's pretty, and so for a dog, how many cones do they have? 2. So they don't have this, they're colorblind, what we would call colorblind, right? Let's talk about another animal for a second. For those of you who already know about this animal, you know where I'm going. Let's talk about the mantis shrimp. How many of you read the oatmeal cartoon? Okay, so if you haven't, you are to go there at the end. It's the link right there at the bottom. Okay, not now. Wi-Fi bandwidth is precious. Let's actually also have, where are we in this row with signups? We finished that row? The row behind you, did we finish? Ms. I grew up in San Francisco, which is not the United States. Did you sign up yet? Oh, good. You're the best, because you're from San Francisco. Anybody else in that row? Are you all signed up? Yeah? Okay, and that's right, we stopped at the yellow shirt. Let's stop at the young lady in the white cardigan. Is that a cardigan? You don't have a laptop? No, that's you. Did you sign up already? Oh. Let's stop at the end of the row. The rest of that row, go sign up now. Starting with the man next to the man in the mint green. we good with who's signing up now? Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. So let's talk about the mantis shrimp. This is an actual mantis shrimp eyes. So also pay attention to, you guys, my thighs are going to kill me after this. Can you see the 3 bands here? 1, 2, 3, with the 3 black dots? Pay attention to that, because we'll come back to that before. And it's also self-cleaning. That's so awesome. Why are mantis shrimps awesome with their vision? Because they're like a human eye, only a gazillion times better. And I have a PhD in ecology, and that's a technical term. Okay? They have 16 cones. Right? So where we have 3, and we make fun of dogs because we call them colorblind, right? They have 16 cones. Right? So they can see color. Like them, the idea of color to them is nothing like what we think of it. They can see in shortwave infrared. So have you guys seen those like infrared photos, those cool ones, or the ones that are bright red for vegetation? They can see not just infrared band, but all sorts of bands in shortwave infrared. Okay? They can tune their spectral vision to different spectral wavelengths. So not only can they see in those bands, they can actually change the values with which they are actually picking off wavelengths of light. They can tune that over time in response to what they want to look at. They can see polarized light. So you know how you all put on those fun polarized glasses to reduce glare and all sorts of stuff? They can actually, one of their ways to see is they can see polarized light as well. The cones that see the visible spectrum and the cones that are infrared are attached to different nerves which lead to different parts of the brain. Right? So all of our nerves go right straight to one part of our brain. They actually have different processing centers for different types of wavelengths. Everybody getting these so far? Are you impressed yet with a mantis shrimp? Do you kind of want to be one? I would love for a second to God, it's so cool. And then the bonus for them, each eye has trinocular vision. So you remember those 3 bands? Those are each a separate eye within the eye. So what does that even mean to see in trinocular vision? With 2 separate eyes that are independently rotating. I just can't, it's amazing to me. Right? So this, you're like, wow, I want to be a mantis shrimp. Well, actually, except for the trinocular vision, seems a lot like a satellite. Right? Actually, the satellites that we're flying in the sky, and by we, I mean actually Digital Globe, we own some of those. Like, how many of you have heard of Digital Globe before? How many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you are people who already work in geo? Yeah, so it's basically all the geo people already knew. But everybody else, how many of you have gone to Google Maps and looked at the satellite view? You've used our products. That's us. We fly the birds and put together those satellite imageries that make up Google Maps. And Bing, is it Bing Maps now, or is it Azure Maps, and Apple's Maps, and other companies buy their maps from us? That's us, right? And so we put together these really highly specialized scientific satellites. If you want to talk about some of the specs on them, we can talk about that. I have a sheet about that stuff. But those satellites, actually, some of the ones we'll be working with today, can actually see in 32 different bands. And they have multiple cameras that take pictures of the same scene at the same time. Right? And so what this allows you to do is to see the unseen when you're actually doing your imagery. Like most of us have gone and admitted, everybody went to Google Maps, and where did you go first? Your house. Right? You're like, oh, cool, there's my house. Oh, look, they took a picture when I owned that car. Oh, my neighbor's got a bigger pool than I thought. Right? So what you can actually do with this, though, is you can use, and we'll do this in one of our exercises, is we're going to use the ratios between bands. We're going to use the infrared and use the ratio between bands to pick out water, where it was not that visible to our eye beforehand. And we'll see this in the notebook when we go through it, but I'll say it quickly now. We see things as red, green, and blue, right? So when we look at an apple or we look at a body of water, we can just say, oh, it looks this color to us. But what ends up happening is each item in the world, as you move along the electromagnetic spectrum, reflects differently. How many of you took college chemistry? Didn't you use the mass spectrometer? Do anybody remember? Or at least everybody used the mass spectrometer, or maybe you took it in high school, if you were at a good high school, right? You could look at the spectral signature of things that you put in it and identify what that is. Well, we can actually do that with visible light and reflectance. And that's some of what you are enabled to do when we talk about the stuff we're doing today. So, that's it for the slides. Okay? Who's done with signups over here? Is that whole row done? You should have said that quicker. All right, yeah, let me go back. And any questions about what we're about to do? We're going to be working, I'll give you a heads up. We're going to be working in Jupyter Notebooks, the whole class. We host the notebooks. So all you'll need for this workshop is a browser. Does everybody have a browser running? How's the internet behaving? When I took the Pandas class, it was very sad. So. No, that's the important part. No. The most important part is like when you first log in and then open the it's that there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes when we first create your account because we're creating containers and then spinning up those containers and attaching to file system when you first log in. Does that sound good? What? It's just stuck? Okay, hold on. Are we done with signups over there? Okay. For the class, go ahead. Does that first link work to the finding an image? I think that's the first one. Is that the first one? Yeah. Is that link working? Has anybody opened this link yet? This is also why you want to get the please don't try to write that down. Please, has everybody opened the slide deck? Okay, for those who are following along, let me give you the link again for the slide deck because you're not going to want to know. Okay, that's the link for the slide deck. That has the links to all the Jupyter notebooks we're using today. It's I did it wrong. For some reason, I kept thinking it was OS, not OD. So it's OSDC 18 workshop. Security through obscurity. That's what I'm doing there. Yeah. Is everybody getting that? What is it saying to you? Uh-oh, something went wrong? Let me just check something. You got it and it's working? Switch it to what? Oh, is that what everybody's doing? Oh, now it works? But the notebook still shouldn't be opening because that first one is like when you're signing up or whatever. Okay, let's go back. We solved this issue, right? Where I have wrong acronyms in my head. We solved that one. Now let's go back to the notebook issue. That issue is still there for everybody, right? It opens in Chrome? But I'm betting it's not opening for other people in Chrome. Yeah. Okay. It shouldn't matter what browser you're in. So this is actually confusing me. And you'll watch me talk to my ops team. No. First I'm going to check something. Let me log in. Okay, so let me go to my library. So these are all the notebooks I've ever written. I'll explain to you what's happening in the interface, in that interface. The Discover page was just showing you public notebooks that you can look at. This is going to take a little bit. There's an open bug on why this takes so long. That should be fixed in 2 weeks, next sprint. All right, so let's find. All right. This is the one. That's why. I don't know when that went. Let's, wait, you're all logged in though, right? Anybody who's clicking on that link is logged in the same browser, is doing that in the same browser they logged into, right? Okay, yeah? Nice, that's a feature, not a bug. I don't know what's going on there. Let me do this. Wait, what? I'm deaf and old. 411? Oh, it's okay. I think I know what it is. Let me just see. If this fixes it, then I'll go through and fix the others in advance. Okay, I think it's that I've got it marked private. Does everybody here use Jupyter before too? Do I have to describe the Jupyter? You don't have to raise your hand. If you haven't used Jupyter before, raise your hand. It's okay. I heard no's. That doesn't match how many hands I'm seeing up though. There's like one guy brave enough. You get a shirt. What size are you, sir? For being at a data science conference and admitting you don't know Jupyter. I love that. I'm an XL. No. There was the guy behind you. You don't get a shirt. Sit back down. It was the guy in the brave guy in the back. What size? I'm an XL. Okay. Coming right up. Is it rendered yet? Fully? Oh, wait. You'll get your shirt in a minute. I just want to, because everybody's waiting on this. Sweet. But what we're going to want people to do is clone and edit this. And do you see clone and edit in the income? You probably do not see the clone and edit. No. Right. So let me update it. Right. What I've done is I've made it a tutorial so you can actually view it, but I didn't make it public. And I think it's done publishing now. Let's see. So if you reload, the page now, you should get it. Is that right? Okay. Woohoo! Everybody needs to click clone and edit. Because basically what you're doing is you're taking my notebook and cloning it into your notebook container so that you can start working on it and screw it up. And basically, everybody else can sign up now if you haven't signed up yet. Okay? For those, well, except in the nosebleeds. You can't sign up yet. Let's just finish the back row, and then we'll take the nosebleeds. Okay? And so the way this workshop, just time out one other thing. Everybody know where the bathroom is? Everybody see that the fire escape is here? We captured everything that we need to. 2 exits. Don't rush one. Second, because your minds are all just going to be blowing up after this. The second thing is, the way I'm assuming this is going to work is people are just going to work independently because there's a lot of text in there that you can read if you want to, and then I will do some of the exercises here afterwards. So when you finish that first exercise, please just raise your hand and say done with 1. Okay? So when we get about 75% done, then I'll circle us up. Sound good? Clear? I may interrupt anyway and just show stuff because I have a hard time not talking. Now let me get his shirt. And then I'll go make the rest of them public. Let's see, how am I? And you logged out, though? You logged out? No, I didn't log out. So log out and try logging back in. By the way, this is only like the 3rd time I've given this workshop. So if people have questions or this is boring, I can change things on the fly. Like, is it okay? Are you guys finding this a good way to proceed? Or should I show it first? There's lots of different learning styles. Who chooses to speak up? Yeah, are you good? You want to show it first? She gets dibs, though, and not because I'm partial to San Francisco. What size are you? Medium? I don't know. I'm not a female, so I haven't tried on the female shirt. So this is the smallest? Okay. I don't have, it's not that I don't have faith in you, it's just this size is so, okay. God, I would never want to wear a shirt this tight. But go ahead. It's so tiny. Okay. It had nothing to do with faith in you. Okay, so basically what we're going to be doing here, okay, actually, I think this is a better format overall. So what we're going to be doing in this first exercise, or this first notebook, is just finding imagery. Right? Like, so that's the first problem we have, right? You're like, oh, I want to do something with remote sensing, and I care about some area. And so I'm going to go find imagery. So what we're doing here is making your search for imagery easier by using a toolbar on the left side, which I think did not load in my note. Oh, yeah, it did. Everybody's got this on the, is it showing up? No, the screen's not exactly. Oh, the AV guy's back, but I'm going to touch his projector just for a sec to see if it's actually off the screen. That's the focus. That's the wrong button. Zoom. No, I'm messing it up. I'm going to let the AV guy, who's right now hovering over me, I just needed to see if it's off to the side, because I don't think we have that. I need that. It's cut, huh? No, I think it's, oh no, it's cut. All right. Does everybody see what we're looking for? Actually, I know how to fix this. It's a browser, right? You can always do. There. Oh yeah, Control minus, or just do that, right? So we're doing the imagery search button. Is that big enough for people in the back? Kinda? Okay. Okay, I'm going to zoom it back out again just so that we can, and I'm actually going to make it bigger. So what's going to happen when you click that button is it's going to insert the code to find the image wherever you last had your cursor in your notebook. Dude who doesn't know the Jupyter notebooks, there's one of you, I'm sorry. I'm not going to, sorry. Okay? You got a shirt for your troubles, though. It should be pretty straightforward about how to use it. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick an area of interest. For here, I'm using Pueblo, Colorado. Just because, so here are some of the things that come up when you look for cloud imagery. Let me show you why I picked Pueblo, and then you can, well, who knows, wait, who's around my age? Like grew up in the 70s, early 80s in the United States? Nobody did? Seriously? Okay, so did you watch TV, or were you in one of those parent households where no TV was allowed? Kinda. Do you remember the commercials about Pueblo, Colorado? There was like this government information center where they would have these cute little commercials, and they'd say, to find out more information, write to blah, 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 blah in Pueblo, Colorado. Do you remember those now? Yeah, so that's why I picked Pueblo. Main reason. The other reason I picked it is because remember we were talking about the light coming off the sun. What can get in the way between the light coming off the sun and the reflected light back up to a satellite? Yeah. Atmosphere, and what else is particular in the atmosphere? Clouds. Right. So the clouds, we need to try to pick an area that's cloud-free. And Pueblo is generally, Yuma, Arizona in the United States would probably be the best. But what we're going to do is we can zoom in into an area that we want. I can type it in, or I can click plus. If you want to follow exactly what I'm doing in the exercise, please pick Pueblo, Colorado. If you don't care, pick wherever you want on the globe, someplace you care about. I will let you know, though, because you're all in the community tier, you're only going to have access to Landsat imagery or Sentinel-2. So Landsat, anybody heard of Landsat? All the geo people again. So Landsat is the US government's imaging satellite. Its pixel resolution is 30 meters on a side. So what that means is when it takes a picture of the Earth, the smallest pixel is actually 30 by 30 meters, which means it's a house. So you won't even be able to resolve a house. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, the data that you can just download off of, we just give you a nice notebook interface to pull that in. Okay? Landsat's really good for things like trying to do land use, land cover, or finding really big objects, like maybe an aircraft carrier. Okay? Sentinel, I think, is like 10 meters on a side or 7 meters on a side, which is still pretty big. Its houses are still pretty fuzzy with it. Okay? So you're saying, well, Steve, that's not great. What am I supposed to do? What we're going to use here is Iconos imagery. It's another satellite that's been out of commission for a while, but it actually took, I think, 1.5 meter pixels. So houses actually show up. We're going to use that. That's available. That's right. You get Iconos, Landsat, or Sentinel. Sentinel's put up by the European government. If you want to actually see the good quality imagery and play with that and not follow exactly here, the way to do that is to go to this open data icon. Everybody see that up? Oh, no, because I've full screened again. See that one, the heart that says open data? If you click on that, it's a bit of a different interface. What this is during humanitarian disasters, Digital Globe makes certain imagery, our best satellite imagery, available both pre and post disaster, so that people can actually go and say, oh, what houses are destroyed? Or what happened to the infrastructure? Or where are the landslides? So that they can send teams out and do stuff. So for example, the first two don't have much post imagery right now. If you want to look at ones that do have some, you can look at the Paulo tsunami, or the Lombok, Indonesia earthquake, or Hurricane Florence. So let's go to the Paulo tsunami. And if we click on that continue link, the interface, yeah. Is there something to do with those buttons? Reload your notebook. It's just that there was the network was too slow when it was trying to load those other assets. Same thing if you get like a kernel not connected. It just means it was too slow in startup. Just refresh your page. So if we go to this, right? Now we can see that was, that was that recent tsunami in Indonesia. Everybody know about that? Right? So those are the images, pre and post, that we took of that area. You can't, let me do this again. Okay, can you see that? And I don't think it, oh yeah, it does, but I need to make this bigger. So if you want to play with the better imagery, oh, by the way, everybody else can sign up now. Sorry for those in the nosebleeds, okay? The pre-imagery is going to be purple, and the post-imagery is orange. And then you just say, you can click on one of them, you can zoom in. Oh, sorry, you can't just click on them. You zoom in 3 more levels, zoom 1 more level. Okay, so now I'm zoomed in. So those are the 2 beginning parts of the interface are different. Does everybody get the 2 different interfaces, or have I confused everybody? Let me go through it quick, slowly, but shortly. You can either pick the normal data you're allowed with in the normal search interface, right? And what you do there is you either type in a place or zoom into an area until it says you can draw an AOI, an area of interest. In the open data interface, you pick an event that you want to focus on, you zoom in until it allows you to draw an AOI, and then everything else is the same. Sound good? The other benefit to using the open data, besides getting access to the high-resolution imagery and all the satellite bands, is it's already pretty much guaranteed to have low cloud cover and a nice satellite angle. Right? The 2 things we care about most are cloud cover and where the satellite is relative to where it took a picture of. Sorry? When you look at it, yeah, because it's taking us. It takes those boxes are actually what the entire image that came off the satellite, right? So it takes what's called a strip, and that's the strip or scene. And then what we're doing is we're saying we want just a chunk of that strip or scene. If you download the Landsat data off of AWS, you're getting a whole strip as well. And so the problem is if you think of an area with lots of tall buildings or mountains, we can actually point our cameras. So if somebody says, I want to come back to that tomorrow and get that same place again, we can actually point the cameras in the satellite at that place. But if it's not directly overhead, what you're going to get is a very skewed photo, like as if you were taking it from the top of a very tall building coming down. So what actually ends up happening to like skyscrapers or mountains or tall trees? Right? They do this whole weird lean thing. So you won't be able to do the very good analysis and things will look off. So the nice part about the open data is that we've tried to select images that had low cloud cover and less skew. And it's really good for, before you want to buy the really good images that we do, it's also really good for testing algorithms with it, right? Because it's the quality stuff for free. Does that make sense? Okay. So then, once you can draw an AOI, or an area, I'm going to keep saying AOI. Let's go to the town. Right, because there's a lot. If you actually want to search on this tsunami, most of the devastation, I shouldn't say action, that's why I stopped myself, happened down here. Okay? And then you click, and then you drag a box. And then on the open data interface, it automatically does a search. On the other one, you just click search. And then it'll show you which images matched your search, what % coverage there was for that box. Right? So, oh yeah, this orange box back here does not have 100% coverage, right? That's why we're getting the 94%. Does that make sense? And then this is the satellite. So this is WorldView 3. This is the one that is probably our best satellite out there right now. It gives you an estimate of cloud cover. Do not look at that image to understand how much cloud cover there is. If you want to see how much cloud cover there is, click the preview button. You didn't zoom in enough. You have to zoom, we're not going to let you take, you have to, it'll say to you, yeah, you're not getting it, you're right. We don't like you. Oh, you know why you're not getting it? You didn't pick an event. You can't get, for the open data, you can't get the plus button until you actually pick an event. Does that make sense? Question? It's one at a time, or actually you can pick multiple. Yeah, Yes, and you can say insert, and you're going to wait a very long time. Because what it's going to do is then pull those down off the cloud and materialize them in your notebook. Yes, 112 at once, I would not recommend in a Jupyter notebook. 112 is what you want to do. Basically, everything we're going to be doing in the notebook today is using our API called GBDX Tools. The platform is called GDBX, hence the GBDX on the sticker. Tools is a nice Python binding to that interface that allows you to do stuff. And then we're going to exercise it through the notebook interface because it's nice and interactive and I can put docs in it. Right? That make sense? Everybody still kind of with me? Okay. You get a t-shirt for your question, and then you get a t-shirt for yours. So what size do you want? Small? Oh my God. You guys, well, not guys, you ladies, I didn't bring that many smalls because I was like, that's so small. Okay. Okay. All right, I'm with you. I hear you, but it's no insult to. That's just okay. And then what's I'm an extra large. Okay. Oh, it is. Look how small it is. No, I wasn't trying to. You thought it was big? Oh my God! Good thing you're not my daughters. That's a medium, large, large. Wait, where? I thought I brought more than one small. Nope, she got the only small. No, there's no extra. Extra small. Extra small, this is a medium. An extra small would be like a 4-year-old toddler. And so in the men's, I have small, medium, and large, and double XL, if anybody wants it. And that's actually why I'm so heavy, is to make everybody feel comfortable about their bodies. I do this as like a method acting kind of thing, is to bring comfort and joy to everybody else, to really feel comfortable in their sizing. The women's sizing is Gildan, so it's like American Apparel. The men's sizing is Hanes Beefy Tees, so that's American sizing, if you know what I mean, not European sizing. Yeah?
So looking at the free data and the worldview, but it still doesn't seem like that's close. I mean, I guess I can see.
Not close, what do you mean? When you're looking at it in preview? Right, preview it's not going to show you. It's just basically doing a thumbnail so you can get a sense before you actually choose to insert it. Does that make sense? Okay, and so let me just show cloud cover. And what I also love is that more women are asking questions than men at this point in time. This is a great conference. Okay, so if I do a preview of this, I don't know where the actual cloud cover is. Let me zoom out. Yeah, so you see the clouds? So just because it's 24% cloud cover doesn't actually mean that cloud cover is where you care about. So you can't always just say, I mean, the only ones you know where it's going to be bad is like 80% or 90%. Then you're like, forget it. The other so if we compare that to the other one, if I preview this, it automatically hides the other. There's the other one. See, there's no clouds in it, right? So, and then what you do is when you're ready, you can just say insert. So I am going to insert. Let me do this in a new notebook. Is that okay? Because I don't want to mess up all the doc on this one. So to make a new notebook, you just say file. You can actually do it up here if you want. Start with imagery. If you're going to use this platform later, start with imagery. Actually pre-populates your notebook with almost a whole tutorial in it, which I find, for me, pretty unhelpful. Because I've already gone through the tutorial. Please don't do that again. What I want is just the blank. So I stay a new notebook. It's not really advanced. It just means you know how to use a notebook. And I'll learn how to use the touchpad on my computer. So, and then I'll insert that in a second after I go. Any other questions? I think that's basically all we do in the first whole tutorial. Is that right? Did anybody skim the whole first tutorial? No? No one did? Question? Like working with satellite imagery in ArcGIS? It is still a raster, right? So you're obviously a geo person. What? Used to be? Okay. You have enough to know. Like if I say the word projection to you, you don't think of like projecting a vector into some 3D space. You think of like geographic projections. Right. That was a dig at all of you data science people. it's like working with rasters, right? And working the concepts are the same, but now you're learning to do it the way you should have learned to do it, which is using programming tools rather than a GUI. Yeah, exactly. And I used to teach. I worked at Esri, and I used to teach GIS at the University of New Haven. So yeah, go. Aha! I think, is that in one of the notebooks? Did we cover that in this notebook? Or is that in other tutorials? Oh no, I cut that one out. A raster, okay, so let's talk, we're gonna talk geo terms first. So all the geo people, you can keep going, because you already know this. Everybody else pay attention. Stop looking at your Facebook pages. There's lots of ways to divide up the world. In the geographic world, or the GIS world, two major ways we divide up the world are vectors and rasters. So rasters basically takes the world and tessellates it usually into a square grid and with lots of little cells inside of it. So it's the exact same thing as when you take a digital photo of any place you're looking at, right? Or anything you do with your camera. So rasters are camera photos. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what we have up in the sky, is a really sophisticated, high-powered digital camera. And it takes pictures, and then we work with those pictures. So if any of you have done a lot of object detection, you can do those exact same things with the raster images we're doing today. If you do image segmentation with like scikit-image or scikit-learn, we can do all those same techniques using those images today. As a matter of fact, everything that we're going to be working with is NumPy arrays. And they're actually Dask arrays, but those are, for all intents and purposes, NumPy arrays. Okay? Does that make sense? Wait, well, let me get to the vector part. Vector is what we do at the end of the exercise, where we take everything that was broken up into blocks and turn it into vector geometries, right? Because then you can do things like calculate area of a certain type. You can look at the shape of it. Right? That's what we do at the end. So that's what you do in object detection when you say, oh, that's a plane, pull out that. We're going to do things, well, we're not going to, but you can do things like pull out how many planes there are and how much area they're taking up on here. Or if you work for, let's say, S&P 500 or Bloomberg, you can say how many cars are sitting on the docks in Newark and Oakland and whatever. You can get satellite images at a regular interval and estimate how many cars are being imported without relying on anybody else's numbers. Another example of that is something like, I'll show you at the end, with the destruction that happened here, is we can say, here's where we think all the houses are beforehand, and here's where we think all the houses are afterwards, and we can look at houses that have gone away because they're vectors. As opposed to saying, this cell changed from this, we can block them into a vector. Does that make sense? Is that clear for everybody, the difference between raster and vector? Sorry. Anything else? You had a question.
Yeah, you talked about like all the different sensor bands. Does this pull just the visible? Or
this one pulls, so if you want to look, let me pull in, I'll pull and I'll show you. This is not in the exercise, so if you want to try this yourself. What were we looking with? Paulo? Why is this not, oh, because I have to be in here. Continue. Okay. Oh, it'll take a while to pull it in. You don't have to watch me do all. Well, actually, this is good, because people wanted to see me do this anyway, right? Sorry? The problem, yeah, but you cut off my left side when I go full screen. Right? Is everything still pretty much there? Except for the pre and post, right? But you can kind of see where I'm clicking. Does that work? Okay. So let's go to the town again. And most everything happens here. Okay. And so why are none of the pre-layers showing up? Oh, they are. They're just, I have to scroll down. It's so small. So let's look at a post one, though. Let's do this one. And let's say insert. And so what's happening here, now I'll just close this for a bit. I think I can close it doing this. It'll still be there when I come back. Okay, you want me to walk you through the code? Yeah, all right. So, remember I said we were going to work with GDBX tools? That's what we're importing in the beginning. That we need that in case we want to. We have the capability in the platform for you to work out an algorithm in a notebook. And if you write it using these env things, you can actually, when you're done with the algorithm in the notebook, you can click on the task buttons that's here, and we can turn that into a self-contained Docker container that you can put into our tasking framework and run it over multiple catalog strips, not just over little images. Remember the big strips? You could say, I want to do this over all of California, or I want to do this over all of North America, or all of Australia. So you can prototype in the notebook and then use that as a task to run over the entire, a much larger area, if you want. So that's why we're pulling this stuff in. It makes your stuff more generic, okay, rather than just saying, pull this catalog ID, okay? So, yeah. That's our platform. GBX is our platform. GDBX Tools is a Python binding to that API that makes it easier to work with in Python. Is it open source? Yes. But it's open source in the sense that it's just a wrapper around calling into our API. All right, so it's open source. You can totally look at it, GDBX Tools under GitHub. You have, yes, so that's why you all had to sign up. This catalog ID is the ID for that strip. So we're saying we want this strip. Does that make sense? Then we're saying I want this bounding box from this strip. Now, here for all the non-geo people in the world, what do you think the order of those coordinates are without looking at the actual numbers and trying to figure it out in your head? What order do you think they're in? Long lat or lat long? Don't? See, I said not doing that. Off the top of your head, what do you think they're in? Wrong. Common parlance, if I asked you if a mathematician, what order do you think they're in? If you think with your math head, what order do we usually give coordinates in? Yes, x, y. These are in x, y. Not long. If you do lat long, that's yx. So I don't know why we agreed on that everywhere else in the world. They'll say lat long. But really, you want it to be in long lat. This long is the big long lines. And so they actually change as they go this way, and so that gives you your x. Lats go this way, and that gives you your y. Got it? So remember that when you go to Google Maps and you're like, ooh, I want this location, and if it gives you it back in lat long, you have to flip them. For non-geo people, this will catch you every single time until you get, and even for some geo people too. Okay? All right, so we're saying this is our bounding box, which is what we drew with our screen. Okay? And then we're going to say, okay, go grab that image. I want the multispectral bands. That's MS. Okay? And there's the box that I want. So it's actually going to take that, and then what does this look like? Kind of looks like matplotlib. Right? We've actually wrapped the only map. There's a big bug in from, I mean, a big feature request in for me. The only thing we've put in is just plot. If you want to do anything else, like besides changing the size, you actually have to dive into matplotlib, right? And pretend you're working with a NumPy array. This is actually a NumPy array. Image is a NumPy array. In this case, well, I can tell you in a second how many dimensions it is, but yeah, question. Wait, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So 1 sec. No, there's actually off the screen. There's 4. It's 2 corners. Yeah. That's what I'm about to answer. This was a long way of getting to the question of how many bands, which was his original question of how many bands does that image actually have. So here's that image, right? You can do image, oops. The left click on this is too close to where I want to click. Image.metadata, and hit enter. Oh, wait, what? Yeah, I think you're right. There. So, can I make this a little smaller? Or people in the back? Sure, says the guy in the front row. People in the back, can you read that at all? Yeah, all right. And if I go smaller, it's probably, for people in my age bracket without glasses on, if I go smaller, we're going to lose it, right? It's right on the edge of legibility? Yeah? Okay, thank you for being honest. Okay, so if you look here, number of bands, that's how many bands we have. Can you see that? Oh, it's probably actually bad that way. 8. So that is an 8-dimensional NumPy array. that is, let's see, 36,882 pixel, or in the whatever dimension, 36,882 cells by 10,661 cells, and eight bands deep, or 8 layers deep. So that means for each pixel on the globe, when we look at it, how many bands of information do we pull out? 3. Here I can actually say for that spot, I've got reflectance in 8 different bands. I'm not just seeing red, green, and blue. I think the metadata tells you what bands we actually get. Yeah. So we get the bands of coastal, which is really good for pulling out coastal waters versus non-coastal waters. It's actually below blue on the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? Blue, green, yellow, red edge. So this is really important for people doing vegetation work, right? Plants reflect, they absorb red light. So it goes green, then they absorb red light with a well right at the red edge. So as you're moving up the spectrum, it goes red, like they start absorbing it red, and then they go really deep right after red, and then they shoot back up at infrared. They reflect a ton of infrared. Have any of you seen those like false color infrareds where all the vegetation is bright red? Right? I can show you how to do that here if you want to make one of those images yourself. So then we have near infrared 1, near infrared 2, and that's it. So then we have 2 other infrared bands after that. So we have all 8 of those bands in that array that we're looking at right now. Yeah? It's doing RGB. It does RGB by default. And you can actually say which bands you want to do in image show. But it does RGB by default. It's basically saying, let me look at my picture. Any other questions? So this should set us up for the entire first exercise. The other thing I want to say is please feel comfortable playing. The only way you really learn anything is not by going through a Jupyter notebook and hitting Shift-Enter, Control-Enter, Shift-Enter, Control-Enter. That teaches you nothing, except how to hit Shift-Enter and Control-Enter, especially since I've given you all the results. Right? I didn't even clear out the results for you. So please try to play a little bit. How are we doing on time? Are we almost done? This is going way too slow. We have a half hour left, or we've been a half hour left? Fuck. All right, I'm going to propose something then. I'm going to propose that I just do the workbooks and you guys watch, even though I said this should all be hands-on. And you ask questions. What do you think about that idea? Okay. I'm going to go through each of the notebooks. I'm actually just not even going to do them. I'm going to talk through them with the analysis results. And then I will stay here for at least another 15 minutes. We're the last session of the day in this room. So I'll stay here if you want to try one of the things I do, because I want to go through and make sure they're all public as well. Okay? And then I'll stay here, answer questions, or do whatever, or we may have time left over. Sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. Basically, in an hour and a half, you can show a talk, is what it is. It's basically impossible unless you do something very, very small to do. Yeah. All right. But you're like, yeah, Steve, we know that. We're experiencing it right now. All right. So let me go back. Yeah.
How long do you keep the account?
That counts free forever.
So it
doesn't expire. Well, forever meaning as long as Digital Globe thinks they need to have an API, blah, blah, blah. All those usual caveats and stuff like that. But there's no like 30 days. If you want to play, there is an evaluation tier. And if you go into the evaluation tier, then you can use some of the tasks. I think you can use some of the tasks. But you can also go in and get the access to all the expensive imagery. And that is 30 days only. Okay? But for just general notebook, yes. What? I am so deaf. Hold on. Yeah, I'm going to make all the notebooks public as I go through them. Oh, Speedy Gonzales trying to go ahead. I see what you're doing. Great. All right, so let's go on to back to my library again. Actually, is everybody done signing up? Okay, I want to tell my colleagues on the East Coast that they can go hang out with their families. Is that okay? Yeah. You got it. All right. We're done with that now. All right, so where were we? That was the workshop. Let me just go through quickly and make sure I did everything. We talked about everything, not did everything. Okay. That was it. So we just loaded an imagery, right? And I tell you which ones you can get. Let's go on to the next section. Okay, so we're going to actually pre-process. Yes? So that box, if you notice, when I did that search, there was multiple images that came back. Those are all from different timestamps. Remember in that box below? Those were all from different time periods.
What if you chose like somewhere that's not like an event or something?
When I do that normal search, it's going to say, here's all we have in the catalog, even some that are not ready to go. You actually have to order them. But here's all the things we have in our, I think it's like a 2 petabyte catalog of images. Here's what you can go get. Right? So, just the same as like when you take digital cameras and you quickly fill up your hard drive, because it's like, oh, I just filled a 16 gig SD card and now I put it on my computer, and you do that like for 15 or 20 events and you've suddenly filled your hard drive. The same thing happens with satellite images, except each of those images are bigger. So if I pull down a whole strip, it's about 60 gigs per strip, 60 to 80 gigs per strip. Okay? And we're collecting lots of those strips a day. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, this is mine. So I'm going to open it. This slowness now, I think, is actually because of the network here. So I'm going to update it to, where's the privacy settings? Oh, up. No. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Do you work for? You already work at Digital Globe, and you're just like a mole in the audience that's making me look bad, right? Publicly, exactly. Okay, public. You're the reason I'm not going to get a bonus this year. Thanks, buddy.
More for me?
Yeah, more for you. Exactly. That's how competitive we are at DG. Culture of collaboration. Okay, that should be open now. Can you, Speedy Gonzales, can you see if it opens for you now? I love that you knew that name is your name now. You have to tell all your friends that that's actually who you are. I would wear that as a badge of honor too. Is it working? Yes? Super Speedy Gonzales behind you is on task. She did it. Okay, so what we're going to do now, right? What we did before was just pull down the image right as it came without any processing. There's some things we can actually do before we actually bring it down to us that actually do some pre-processing on the satellite, in the chain itself. And so what we're going to do in this one, the first thing we're going to use is we're going to what's called atmospheric compensation. So this gentleman before said that one of the things in between the satellite and the Earth is the atmosphere, both for the light going in, but also the light coming back out. And so if there's a hazy day, right, or if there's high cirrus clouds or high moisture in the atmosphere or dust in the atmosphere, that actually causes problems with the light coming back. It changes it. So if you want to compare two scenes between a hazy day and a non-hazy day, you can't. Your reflectance values are going to change, not because of anything that changed on the Earth, but what was in between your camera and the satellite. And the ground. Got it? So what AComp does, atmospheric compensation does, is it says, oh, I've looked at you've all seen the GOES satellites, the ones that show like the tornadoes and everything that we all look at, and they're very coarse resolution, but they cover very large areas. We take models with that, plus also climate models, and we actually correct the image for what we think that kind of atmosphere would have done to the reflectance values. Because we know the performance characteristics of the satellite itself, the satellite on a clear day, so we know that with nothing in between, and so we try to correct for that. So that's what ACOMP does. And what you can see in this example down here, it's a debate though, right? There is a debate about ACOMP. Why might ACOMP be a problem? Because everybody would be like, oh, of course, I want to ACOMP all my images. The problem would be is if you use ACOMPed images from two different algorithms. So like we ACOMP in a specific way with a specific model. If you internally have a different ACOMP model, you're actually changing pixel values, right? So think of it in data science terms as you're applying two different transformations to the data. We're transforming by centering, and we're transforming by taking the log. Okay, those are both going to reduce the variance, but that's actually going to induce very different numbers underneath. So it's the exact same thing that's happening here, right? So, but what it can do, and here's an example, I think this is in San Francisco. You can see the before and after. The way you call it, the way you call it is, remember before when we did the get image or the catalog image? You just add a parameter that says ACOMP equal to true. And when you do that, before we pull down the image and send it to your notebook, we're going to do atmospheric correction. Yeah?
Sorry, this is a little bit advanced question, but can you choose any technique for...
ACOMP? No. It's the digital globe ACOMP technique. Right? So that way, one of the nice parts about that, though, is anything that you use ACOMP for whenever is always going to be the same for all the images. We're always using the same model as long as you use that technique. And what that does is it does that to the image. Left is before, right is after. Okay, so this is actually, and if you're doing object recognition, you don't actually care about pixel values. Right? All you will care about is objects. So if you're doing object recognition, I would always do ACOMP, no matter what. Because it's always going to make the image clearer. And for a lot of ACOMP, what we've at least seen for now with most of the general, not for ACOMP, for object recognition, with most of the general images we've seen internally, adding the extra spectral bands or changing the pixel values doesn't really affect the algorithms that much. For at least what we've seen with CNNs. Okay? The next thing I said you couldn't leave until only in the beginning. Now there's shame upon, just kidding. The next thing we're going to do is pan sharpening. Okay? So the way you do this in your code is you say pan sharpen equals true. What does that actually do to your image? Well, on each of these satellites, we have a camera that's taking what's called a panchromatic image. It's basically saying, I'm going to capture all the reflectance in the visible light range and make that a grayscale. That's actually a much easier sensor to build because we're getting a lot of reflectance back. Right? We have a lot of energy coming back into the sensors. So we can actually get that, like on our Worldview 3, down to 0.3 meters. So 0.3 meters is about a foot. That means the pixel size is about that on the Earth, which means you can see center lines on streets, which means you can see telephone light posts. Right? So if you're doing things like crowd detections, anything with street networks, anything like that, you're going to want 0.3. Our panchromatic that you pulled down is 0.5. Right? So something probably like that. So if you're doing something like object detection, this gentleman keeps shaking his head, the guy in the blue shirt behind the guy in the pink shirt, who was wearing a lime green shirt but is no longer because he's trying to trip me up. But the guy in the blue shirt keeps nodding his head, yeah, object detection. With object detection, you're going to want the best pixel sizes you can get. And the reason why you might not want that, what happens if if I use that better quality, spatial quality, to merge with the better quality, spectral quality? What happens when I merge those two images together? What am I doing to the spectral numbers? If you take two images and you fuse them together, what are you doing to the underlying pixel values? You're changing them, they're averaging, you're using some sort of resampling technique to actually get them to be the smaller size. So if you're doing spectral techniques, you have to be careful with this one as well, right? Where you're doing something where you're trying to rely on the actual pixel values. But what it does is it makes it look there's the original without pan sharpening, and there's the on the right-hand side with pan sharpening. Right? So you go from basically pretending you don't have glasses on to, oh, I have glasses on now. Right? So that's pan sharpening. So these are some of the techniques you can apply before the images. Any questions on these? Yeah. So you can do that with Landsat and Sentinel too. Landsat has a 10-meter band, panchromatic, and you can merge that with the 30-meter Landsat pixels. So then you get down to a 10-meter pixel, which is still pretty big, but you can see things smaller than an aircraft carrier. And so why I keep saying you can see things, this is something that geo people don't always get. If I say a pixel is 30 centimeters on a side, that means everything within that 30 centimeters becomes one pixel or one value. Right? So just because something is 30 centimeters on a side doesn't mean I can't see anything smaller than 30 centimeters. And things which are like 40 or 50 centimeters are probably going to be pretty hard to see too, unless you get some sort of exact alignment among the pixels. Does everybody get that? Okay. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, 30 centimeters, that means I can see 30 centimeter things. Not necessarily. Okay? All right, so that's it for that workbook. Everybody good? Okay, next tutorial. And I'm on to your game, so I'm not going to lose all my bonus. I'm going to click open, scroll down this time, and click private. Public, I mean. Woo. Oh, so this is your question about what's a raster? You're still here? This is where I talk about it. It's time to data science all the things. That's what we're doing that in this one. But before I do that, yeah, it's still private. Hold on. I have like all people in here that's like, I feel like, yeah. I know, everybody wants my bonus. I feel like I'm in like, and I love being in a Mediterranean country, but I feel like I'm in a Mediterranean country right now. Like, rapido, rapido. You're so slow. Get on the bus. There, it's done. Okay? Now it should not be private anymore. So this is, I'm assuming you didn't know bands in Python. So I talk about working with the bands as a NumPy array in this one. Okay? So I get the Pueblo image, and then I ask for the data type. So there's the Pueblo image, and the data type, by default, we give you back, it's a integer pixel value. Right? Because we don't have like 13.4 reflectance. Have you ever looked at like camera photos and looked at the pixel values in camera photos? It's an integer of how much, depending on how many bits are in the image. It's like when it was back in 8-bit images, it's 0 to 256. Right? In each cell of the array, it was some value between 0 and 256. This is 16, so we go up to 20, whatever 2 to the 16th is. 25,000, 26,000, something around like that, I think. Is that right? Okay, there you go. So 32,000, thank you. So now each of those pixels, so we're 8 by however 10,000, 30,000, and then each pixel can be anywhere between 0 and 32,000, something. Right? Got it? Good? Okay. So the reason this matters, though, there's 4 bands in the Iconos image, right? And I did this little talk, which most of you probably already know, though, since you work with Python. Don't forget, what happens if you divide an integer by an integer in Python? And I know they say it's fixed in 3, but I haven't seen it. What happens? You get an integer back, and so what ends up, what we're about to do is calculate an index, right? So what we're about to do is pull out each band. We're going to do, this is an infrared. What we're about to do is calculate an index, and that's going to matter, and I'll talk about it in a second. Here's our original, with the red band being displayed as red, the green band being displayed as green, and the blue band being displayed as blue. That make sense? What we've done here is we've shifted the bands. So now, everything that you see red is reflectance in the near infrared. Does that make sense? And what we see as red, what we see as green, is actually reflectance from the red band. And what we see as blue is reflectance from the green band. This is called false color infrared. What did I say about where do plants really reflect in? Infrared. So what ends up happening, and this is if any of you work for crop sciences or are going to work with crop science people, this is a very important metrics for you. This is used a lot in precision agriculture. Because the healthier the plant is, the more chlorophyll it has, the more brightly it reflects in the infrared band. And so everything in this image now over Pueblo, Colorado is, everything red is healthy green vegetation. Right? Or healthy vegetation. I shouldn't say green. Healthy vegetation. Right? And this water, you'll notice water does not reflect very much in the infrared. As a matter of fact, it should absorb most of it. And so you can see this becomes really dark. Okay? So what they'll do in precision agriculture is they'll fly drones or they'll fly planes with these bands on them, or even they'll use satellite images. And what they'll do is they'll look at fields. So if you own like a couple square miles of corn or soybean or multiple square miles, you're not going to go out there and try to drive your tractor every day or every couple days to look where field is doing well or not. You'll actually map out polygons where, oh, this looks like it's not green enough. I'm going to put more fertilizer and more water in that area. Maybe something's wrong with my irrigation system. And I'm not going to put as much fertilizer and water in those other areas. So it allows for a much better application of the resources when you can do that kind of imagery. Yeah?
So if you zoom in on the infrared band, can you differentiate between different crops or not?
Actually, yes, if you have more infrared bands, like this is why you would want more bands, people have actually been able to tell the difference between different species of trees, different species of crops. You can do all that kind of stuff. It depends on the chemistry within. Because you know, like, how many of you have lived in an area where the trees' leaves change colors? Is everybody? Yeah? And you'll notice they're green, why? Chlorophyll. But then once all the chlorophyll dies, what happens? Some turn brown, some turn red, some turn like all sorts of colors. Those are the accessory pigments. And so those accessory pigments also have reflectance spectra. And so when we get the light that's coming off, you can actually look at differences in that spectra because of the accessory pigments as well. Also the amount of water content in the leaf, right? Because remember, water absorbs, so the more water, like there's all sorts of stuff they can do based on that. So it turns out, when we get to the index page, I'll show you. But there's whole fields of, imagine there's a whole discipline of remote sensing, right? So there's tons of people spending all their time doing this. The other thing I wanted to show you, though, is this is the reflectance in each of the individual bands. And so what we notice is the blue, the green, the red, they all kind of look the same, just darker or lighter. What happens is, though, the near and, like these are baseball fields up here. Can you guys see the baseball fields? Ugh. Not cricket, baseball. This, right? The game that is only played in small parts of the world with a bat and a ball. But if you look at most of those in the visible spectrums, the blue, red, blue, green, they're pretty dark. Right? Look what happens when I do the near infrared for the baseball field. Right? That's nice, healthy vegetation because they're watering that and putting fertilizer on it. So that's part of what happens, right? So here comes the index part, and this is where that math comes. These, I have to go a little bit smaller so I can fit the whole graphic in. Got it? This is the electromagnetic spectrum on the bottom. And what we're looking at here, I'm loving this talk so much I don't even care about time. Actually, I need to get rid of shirts. I don't know how to get rid of them, though. I know everybody wants them. You asked a bunch of questions. I know. I don't want a mob, though, either. You work at where? Where do you work? Where though? Great. Great. So you don't get a t-shirt because I don't have to convince you to use our imagery. Just kidding. You can have one. I'm going to have to wait until the end. If you leave early, you don't get a t-shirt. Okay. So here's the reflectance, right? Electromagnetic reflectance along this here. And this is the how much reflectance you had in that band. So you can see each of these things has a unique spectra, right? This is just like mass spectrometry again. Now the thing is, if we were to just look, this is about, I think this is the red well, right, for the plant. So if we just looked here versus here, you can tell plants apart. But if we actually did this versus this, if we looked at the differences here versus here, it becomes much clearer about what is vegetation and what's not. right? And that's why we calculate indices. Because sometimes things and this, like, they stay the same, or they're very similar in value, so it's hard to tell by our visual. But if you actually look at the ratios between, we can't calculate ratios very well with our eyes. Does that make sense? Right? We can just see the reflectance. But if I actually look at the ratios, that actually gives me much better quantitative information about what's happening along the spectra. So those are what's called indices. Yeah, go.
So when this much more clear to our picture, it also means much more clear for the computer.
Yeah. Yeah, if we can see it with our eyes, with only 3 cones, it should be much clearer to the computer too. Does that make sense? Like, that's why it's never as good as they show on the spy shows, but that's why, like, in the spy shows, when they go, I'm going to turn on this band of information, you're like, whoo, all this stuff pops out at us. Yeah, I'll get you. It depends. So it's all, I can't answer that in the abstract. Her question was, how granular can you get in telling things apart? I can't answer that in the abstract. Because it depends, one, on what the satellite's giving you for bands, and 2, it depends on how differentiated their spectra are. Right? Like, if you look at algae and water, it has a very different spectra than this. Right? Because it's almost a totally different, it's not a kingdom, but they're very evolutionarily diverged and have very different photosynthetic pigments. But if you're trying to look at, like, maybe a spruce versus a fir, or within 2 species of spruces, it's probably going to be relatively hard. You'd have to have, there is, just one sec, there is sensors that are called hyperspectral. And what they do is they're sampling like 256 bands here. So you basically can reconstruct that entire line. And then you can come up with, if you were doing, like, if you're some big forestry company and you want to get into that kind of stuff, you're probably flying hyperspectral imagery and coming up with a specific index for your application. Yeah. You won't, but then it's much more expensive because you're hiring a plane, and then getting a hyperspectral sensor, and then having somebody who knows really in depth about spectral stuff. Theoretically, you could do it.
Is there a reason for UV?
UV starts right about here. Oh no, ultraviolet. Sorry, here. I'm just ignoring it in this graph. Water would go, I think water goes up or something like that. I don't know.
So the reason that we don't have it here is that because it doesn't go through the atmosphere?
Coastal, actually it is filtered, but coastal I think is like really low blue. Almost UV. That coastal band I told you about? But yes, I don't think it reflects as much as, I think you're right. Yeah. Electromagnetic spectra, values of the electromagnetic spectra. Wavelength. Sorry. Okay. So, does everybody get indices now? Because you're probably going to want to work with these if you're not doing object detection. Object detection doesn't care about this, but you could use it still. I wanted to show you this because I think this was awesome when somebody showed it to me. This is a list of all the different indices people have come up with. And it's in that sheet that I just made public. So you can go back and look at this later. But it's 2 pages long, and so it's over 100 different indices. And this is just commonly used ones with actual, like, several research papers backing it up. Okay? No, don't copy the link. It's in the notebook. You don't have to copy it. Don't copy it. Okay? And you can look at the formulas. And then I've also linked, I think I linked in here, right here. No, I didn't. But I can show you somewhere else. There's a link somewhere in one of my spreadsheets. We're going to calculate normalized water different index. Right? So this should pick up water really well, which is basically green minus near infrared divided by green plus near infrared. Okay, so why do I care about integers versus floats? I'll tell you, no, not precision, not even precision. I'll tell you, this might have happened to somebody as they might have started to work with satellite imagery. You'll calculate that index and not convert things into floats first and leave everything as integers, and then you're like, why are all my values either 0, minus 0, or 1? This is supposed to be like a graded index, but we're doing division. It shouldn't just, it's because everything got either floored or rounded up, or it just turns it back into integers. So what we actually have to do in here before we can calculate the index, when I actually pull them out over here, when I pulled out the bands, where is it? You'll see I cast them to numpy floats so that we were actually doing floating point division. So if you get caught and you do like a histogram of your values and it's all like very sharp peaks, either you have a black and white image, or like really black and white image, or you forgot to turn them into floats. Okay? And so when we calculate that index, that's what we get. Right? So it's going basically between 0.5 and minus 0.5. We don't have anything that strong. But you can see, I don't think, to me, I didn't catch that there was water up here when I looked at the original image. Right? It wasn't visible using the RGB bands. But there is some little stream that's feeding off over there. And I didn't catch these little ponds down here with my visible eye. Right? But when you do the index, they pop out. Because we're taking not just the actual reflectance value, but the ratios. So that's why indexes are good. And the vegetation people, they do NDVI. Instead of NDWI, they do NDVI, which is near infrared divided by red. I mean, near infrared minus red, or near infrared minus red over near infrared plus red, instead of green. Okay? So then what we do is we actually threshold this. So what I do is I then use NumPy right here. This is all NumPy stuff saying, how many did the pandas class yesterday? So this is similar, or how many of you have used pandas? Okay, so the rest of you didn't go to the class because you're like, loser, I already know that stuff. What we're doing here is basically making true-false arrays. Do you see that in those statements? Basically anything in our NDVI image greater than 0.2, 0.3, or 0.4. Because we're trying to decide what's water. Because it's not like this creates 1-0 indices, right? There's a whole bunch. Those highways, although they're blue, I do not think they're water. So I have to find some sort of threshold that says, this is what I'm doing water. This is very, very basic remote sensing techniques. You wouldn't do it the way I'm doing it now. You would probably look at histograms and you might do some clustered classification on it. I'm just doing it so that you can get a sense of what to do in notebooks. So we threshold them. And so this is what it thinks, there's the original, there's what it thinks is water with a 0.2 threshold, right? And so it looks like we're missing that whole, we're missing a lot of the water up here, right? That's kind of gone, that I think was water there. No, 0.2 means we got more. So we got that river up there, but I don't actually think that is a lake or water. It might be in a mine. This is, if you were doing this for reals, what would you do? Field work. You'd send somebody out there and say, what is that? Right? When you originally did this, you would have some, and you were training your algorithms, you'd have field samples. The same way you would with any data science. Right? These are trues and these are falses. Okay. Then we'll crank the threshold up. So we become more and more sure that it's water, but we lose features. Make sense? That's all we're doing in this notebook. So then we use our mask. This is the fun part. And we actually plot what's the water. Right? So we send a 0.4 mask, and then we put that back over, and then we truth check it. Good? Okay. Any questions on that? I think we're coming into the home. I think we have 6 minutes left. Okay. Yeah.
Is there any reference to know what material, what kind of...
There's tons of reference material out there, all over the place. Not all over the place. In the scientific literature and other literature. Like, material scientists do reflectance spectra on all sorts of things. Metals reflect differently in the short wave infrared. So SWIR, SWIR, which is actually past the near, it's more farther up. Metals have all sorts of interesting characteristics. And I can actually get SWIR data, right? And SWIR can also see through through smoke clouds, but also can detect fire. Fire shows up really hot in that, so it's really good for fire detection and fire boundaries. But you can't get SWIR data for everywhere from us without special permission. Do you know why? Well, if you can detect metals really well, what do you think certain governments use it for? It's very good for looking at things under tarps, right? Or like those mesh net where the camouflage mesh. As long as I can see some of that metal underneath, if I can pick up something like, let's say, depleted uranium or something like that, shows up very bright in a certain SWIR, it's very easy for me to find hidden armaments and weapons and bunkers and all sorts of fun stuff. So SWIR data is awesome from us because we have to get a license from the US government to fly our satellites. You can't get it for everywhere. Europe, you might be able to get it. Sentinel, the Sentinel-2 that I talked about, it's flown by the European government. It may not have as many restrictions in certain places. So, but you didn't hear that from me. But SWIR is actually really interesting because there's a lot of differences at that part of the spectrum. So I really wish we would be nicer about it. Like hopefully someday it'll be like what we do with GPSs. How many of you, okay, for those of you who remember life when there was CD-ROMs, right? It used to be when you got a GPS, what was like the best accuracy you could get? Like 30 meters, 10 meters. It was no way you could drive a car with it. And why was that? Because the military said this is a military advantage for us, and so we're going to make sure that it's scrambled. They actually intentionally scrambled the signal. And so over time, they're like, oh, wait, the benefit, everybody else can do it now anyway, and now there's the GLONASS and all those other satellite GPS systems. So now we can use it for driving cars and stuff. Hopefully we'll get there with SWIR imagery some point as well. Basically, every other country has to implement SWIR, or have a satellite with SWIR, and then we can all have it, because then it's not a tactical advantage. All right, last notebook. Oh no, was that the last notebook? Oh no, here. Okay, so open. And this time I'll say the right word, private. See, took me 3 chances and then I got it. I'm going to make it public now. There we go, update. Okay, so in this one what we're doing, same stuff again, right? So this whole front code block is basically recreating the 0.3 level, I think is what I decided on, was the right threshold. And then what I'm doing in the rest of the code is I got to talk about this. Let me show you the code, what I do. And then I got to talk about this quickly for the non-geo people because it matters. What I do here is I use some other libraries and I collect GeoJSON out of the rasters. I basically say, take contiguous raster blocks and make them into a single vector. Does that make sense? So I have a bunch of the white pixels, which are supposed to be water. They're all in one block. It's going to take that and draw a line around it and label that 1 or 0 or whatever I want to label it, okay? So that's what raster.io does. And then I can make GeoJSON from that. What's GeoJSON? GeoJSON is a specification for putting geography or geographic coordinates into a JSON file in a specific way so that you can use it as an interchange format. Does that make sense? So it can have attributes, but then it also has spatial coordinates which you can plot in lots of packages. Okay, non-geo people, pay attention. Okay, what shape is the Earth for reals? It's a sphere. What shape is our screen? Flat, it's 2D. Can you take a 3D object and make it a 2D object without distorting it? No. It turns out there are about a gazillion different ways to take the Earth and turn it into a 2D object. These are called projections. This is when I was making that diss on you guys about before, like not projecting. It is kind of like projecting a vector, but it's really how you take the Earth and make it into a coordinate system. Okay, is the Earth truly a sphere? No, it is a bumpy sphere with mountains and valleys and all sorts of stuff. And when you do that smushing, that also actually changes the way you smush the Earth. That's called a datum. It's your approximation for the sphere. And there's about a bazillion different datums as well. Why? Because let's say you're trying to do mapping in Nepal, and then you're doing mapping in Indonesia, and like the islands of Indonesia, in Fiji. You don't want to use the bumpiness approximation in Nepal in the flat islands of Indonesia, because that's making very different assumptions about what Nepal looks like and then trying to apply that to Indonesia. So your model ends up projecting things into the wrong space. So if you want really accurate things, you make a projection and a datum for that area. So like, for example, in California, we have state plane, and we have 3 different state plane coordinate systems in California because we're so long, right? And people like surveyors, land property assessors, all those people care about that level of accuracy. Right? If you're caring about little bits of feet, then you're going to care a lot. Okay, does everybody get projections and datums now? Turns out there's a lot of them. All I want you to know is GeoJSON only allows geometry or lat long coordinates with a datum called WGS84, which stands for World Geodetic System 1984. This is when a collaborating body around the world came up with a good approximation for the bumpiness for the entire world. So GeoJSON only accepts what's called WGS84 coordinate system. There's no, and it's all in degrees. Okay? All of our satellite images, lucky for you, are in WGS84 with degrees. So when we take these vectors out, they're perfect for going into GeoJSON. You don't have to do anything to them. The problem is going to come up within your company is if you're working with spatial people, they may not be giving you data in unprojected WGS84. Okay? So if you ever draw your stuff or they draw your stuff on top of their stuff and it doesn't match up, the only thing you need to remember about that right now is I need to go learn more about projections. Okay? I'm not going to tell you, there's actually geodesy, like measuring of the earth and stuff, you can get a PhD in that. And there's EPSG, which is the European Petroleum Standards Group, has come up with a numbering system, and it goes up into the 9,000s for projection and datum matchings. Okay? So just know about that. So I think most of what you're going to want in the end of your analysis is actually vectors. Most people do not want to stop at rasters, and that's why I put it in here. Okay? And so here we're going to tell you how to export your GeoJSON to a file, and then how to bring it down. Good? And then we're done. So the last of the slides, to finish up, in one other thing about the Mantis Shrimp that all those other people missed on, their eyes pre-process the visual information before it actually gets to the brain. So you know how when we did that whole apple thing, we couldn't tell it was a red apple until it got back here? I don't know if this is exactly right, but they can basically say, the eye can say apple and send apple back to the brain. So it doesn't even have to, because brains are expensive, right? Energetically speaking, the most calories in your body are used by your brain. And so they can actually be more efficient by processing there, and both faster and more efficient by processing there and sending back. So here's how you get to be the Mantis Shrimp. We, DG, are the complete eye. You get to be the Mantis Shrimp. See, that's what we're doing for you. So we do all that processing for you. So not covered today. I didn't tell you how to call low-level GBDX services. I just showed some GBDX tools. A lot of different image processing. So I just showed AComp and what was the other one I showed? Pan sharpening. But there's a bunch of other stuff you can do actually at the lower level. Distributed processing. I told you about tasks. Any of the machine learning work we're doing, it's an alpha for Veda. If you're a machine learning company, contact us. We're interested in some of this stuff. Not included, even though you're a Mantis Shrimp now, are the arms of death. Mantis Shrimp's arms move so fast when they do, it's basically the same as getting struck by a .22 caliber bullet. And it moves so fast it creates supercavitation, which actually superheats the water beneath, and it actually emits light, not in this picture, but in other pictures. So basically, not only can they see you, but they can basically destroy you with their, because of the supercavitation, it's not just the hit, it's the air bubble that comes after it as well. So you basically get hit twice, just to let you know. And the other thing we don't include is fabulous sexy time outfit. When Mantis Shrimps are engaged in sexual activities, they glow in UV. So you can actually, they glow in the dark. Good for red lamps. Or blue, was it purple lamps? Whatever you guys spent. So there's the end. There's the slides. Oh, I know it's going to, thank you. I'm taking the breath because I'm worried about the t-shirts.